Welcome to the Jaron Jarvis channel. I am Jaron Jarvis. Today, I would like to introduce to you, I logged into the wrong Twitter account. It's funny how fast society can break up. Hey guys. Sorry for the long wait. After last time, and for reasons that will become evident soon, I've been having issues finding places to charge my laptop and phone. In case this is the first time you are reading my story, here's a synopsis. I messed up my Twitter password but still logged into the app, only to find that I was seeing a different reality where my best friend hadn't killed himself part 1, then I found out that my Reddit was also on a different reality part 2, and then I went on to find out that in my world, after a major terrorist attack in London, everything was going south part 3. On the meantime, I'm seeing holes in reality that might be related to my social media usage. Several things have happened, but let me start with the big one. The bombs were dirty bombs. They apparently carried a homemade version of smallpox that had an incubation period of a couple of days and then starts hitting really hard. Fever, bleeding from the ears and mouth, swelling, death. The death toll is now on the 7 figures, and to be honest, it might be even higher. The infection was not found in the first day, and a lot had left London for places where they felt safer, so when they started showing symptoms it was already too late. Most of the UK is affected. I've heard that Europe and Africa are also engulfed in chaos, with countries in Asia and America doing what they can to keep people out. It's hard to get proper news now. The BBC is trying to keep up, but at this point it's just a few idiots with little idea of how broadcasting tech works. Other stations seem to have given up completely, or being taken over by conspiracy nuts who are dissing out more misinformation. The remaining people are ganging up or joining cults, Walking Dead style, only with no zombies. Before I jump into what happened to me, and I shit you not, a lot has happened, let me give you the run-up of the differences between our worlds that I promised on the previous installment. At this point I'm sure that Twitter world and Reddit world are also two different places, so keep that in mind. Please keep in mind that I've never been very active in any accounts, so the information I have to go on about myself is limited. Third caveat, I wrote this almost a week ago. Some things are different now, but we'll get to that. My world. Twitter world. Reddit world. Chris is dead. Chris is alive and well. There's no Chris. Tyra is mad at me. Tyra and I are happy. There's no Tyra. Brexit is a mess, I guess. Brexit is a mess. Brexit is a mess. Trump and Putin. Trump and Putin. Trump and Putin, they somehow seem slightly worse somehow. English literature at college. English literature at college. Not really sure what I studied, but it looks like I didn't finish college. Liked video games back at school, but I ended up doing less and less of them. No real info, but doesn't seem like I'm much into video games. I don't seem to follow any gaming accounts. Massive interest in video games. Live in London. Live in London. Not really sure, but not London. Korea has been one since World War II. Korea has been one since World War II. Apparently there's a place called North Korea that seems really weird. Tens of thousands dead at the LSM. No LSM. Seems like there was a minor stabbing at LS, but nothing serious. I noticed several other divergence points, but they mostly fit into this pattern. It seems like my world and Twitter world are very close, with the major divergence point being the LSM, and, if that was triggered by me talking to the bomber, then fuck, I don't want to follow that line of thought anymore. However, Reddit world seems to be further away. Some major events during World War II seemed to have happened differently, and it looks like the 70s and 80s were extremely different. From what I've gathered from various history subreddits, it seems like you had something called the Cold War that didn't really happen on this side. Those influenced a lot of stuff. Apparently you guys actually went to the fucking moon. But funnily enough, it seems like technology did follow a similar pattern on all sides. Now, back to the current events. It's been over a week since we last spoke, and if you remember, I was at my place, with no power and no battery left. I waited for 2 days for the power to come back, but nothing happened. At first I didn't realize it, but it soon became apparent that there was nobody else left in my building. The second night I spent there with no power, the silence was so deep that I found myself unable to stop. I ended up throwing a ball to the wall just to make sure I wasn't completely deaf. At the dawn of the third day, I wasn't aware yet of the smallpox, so I grabbed some supplies from my closet and fridge, and I set out to try to find Tyra. We weren't exactly in talking terms, but I figured these were special circumstances, and of course, power in numbers and all that stuff. If things were as messed up as they seemed, we needed to band together so we could make it through. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but empty city streets are fucking scary. As soon as I stepped out of my building, I felt eyes on me. I know people say that, and I never really realized what it meant, but somehow I could feel a chill on the back of my neck, that followed me as I started walking through my neighborhood. As I moved closer to the river, I started seeing signs of riots and fights. I saw my first corpse 3 streets away from my home. It was an old man and it looked like he had jumped from one of the buildings. His arms and legs were all twisted in unnatural ways, and his head was bashed in on the right side. I noticed that there was a trail of blood, almost 5 feet long, going from the point where he had hit the sidewalk, which was cracked, to the place where he had died. I realized that the fall hadn't killed him. He had had to crawl, on broken limbs, until he could move no more. God knows how long it had taken him to move those 5 feet. I didn't get close to him, but the smell was overpowering. Then something dawned on me. I had seen 2 or 3 animals roaming the street. Not in a 12 monkeys nature has taken over the city kind of way, but rather in a feral abandoned cat or dog kind of way. I had guessed that they were animals whose owners had left or worse, and were trying to adapt to the radical new environment. However, the corpse had been intact. It was an easy meal, for any cat that was suddenly thrown into a world with no whiskers, but it was untouched, like the animals knew they had to avoid it. I didn't realize it then, but that had been my first encounter with the pox. I was moving east, to reach the Thames and Westminster Bridge Road. Tyra's mom's house was on the other side of the river, over at Willesden, not really walking distance in ideal circumstances, but I guessed it would have been hard to stop a bus. I had a good 2 to 3 hours walk ahead of me, but after the first few streets I was feeling somewhat energized. I had been making small mental notes of hiding places, places that might have food in them and places that would be good shelters. I guess reading a lot of survival horror had triggered some parts of my brain that were helping me navigate this situation. Again, this was not a zombie apocalypse, people were dead and stayed dead, so places like pubs and stores were still stocked. I had been expecting more places to have been trashed or destroyed, but London stood proud. The stocky stone buildings were made to last, and they were holding up preciously. Then I reached the river. At first, it looked normal, but I noticed that there was something on the middle of the bridge I was going to cross. I decided to investigate a little bit more, and I moved closer to the edge. When I looked over, my mind shut down and I found myself seconds later on the floor, puking my guts out. Let me tell you something, it's easy to read about death, even massive amounts of deaths. However, when I saw the bodies, clogging the river from side to side, motionless, my mind was unable to cope with it. I have no idea how many people I saw there, but I swear to God it had to be thousands of them. Row after row of legs, arms and the occasional head tangled together, like spaghetti on a plate. It was impossible to know where one person began and the other ended. If you've ever read about rat kings, try to imagine a massive, yards-long human king. I can only write about this now. 5 days have passed, and I've seen a shitload more of death. It's a part of me now, and it's slightly easier for me to disconnect the primal part of my brain that just wants to throw up at the image of it again. Back then, I completely blacked out. I can only piece up what happened then from a few bits and pieces, but the whole event feels like a dream. I'm saying this because there are some events on the next part of the story that will feel unbelievable, but please take into account that I was in a sort of fugue state. I remember telling myself that crossing the river was the most important thing I had to do. I felt evil was on the south side in a tangible, almost physical way. With every breath, I was letting evil into me. I was losing myself to the monsters that had been following me. I ran faster than I had ever run. I lost my backpack, and most of the things I was carrying. Nothing mattered but reaching the other side. I felt howling, and screaming. Now I realize that this was probably myself, but back then the monsters felt so real that I could feel them tearing at my clothes, and grabbing my feet. I was possibly scratching and tripping myself, and I really have no idea how I reached the bridge. Once I reached it, I didn't stop running, but I saw that there was a wall made out of metal spikes built into it. Somebody had barricaded the bridge, and it was some military shit. Barbed wire, sandbags, caltrops. To me, at that moment, it looked like the wall that separated the safe, clean side of the world from the place where the shadow lived. I threw myself against the wall head first, and as I felt the barbed wire ripping my body to shreds, I felt that I was being cleansed, that I was leaving behind the impure and dirty on me. I should have died. As I speak, I can see the scars in my arms and legs and they run fucking deep. I only remember the feeling that my unclean blood was finally being purged, that I was going to be free. And then, an angel moved into my line of sight. Holy shit, it's you, it said. I passed out, and woke up 2 days later. Fuck, this is exhausting. I hate leaving you guys with a cliffhanger, but I really need some more sleep. I'll try to write down the missing 3 days as soon as I wake up, and post them as soon as possible. Just a little word for those of you concerned about my safety, thanks. You guys are keeping me sane. Telling you my story is therapeutic, and it helps. Everything seems so unreal that just knowing that some people are listening at the other side is the only thing that's keeping me going. You guys are like a lighthouse, telling me which way to move forward to. Thanks.